Welcome to the Star Spangled Sit Down. I am your host, Bobby Adelson Jr., Public Affairs Officer at the U.S. Embassy. Today is World Press Freedom Day. Freedom of expression is a human right enshrined in Article 19 of the UN's Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Here at the U.S. Embassy, we recognize the integral role a free press plays in building prosperous, resilient, and free societies. Of course, the U.S. is protecting journalists physically, digitally, and legally. And one of the things the State Department is doing is spending up to $3.5 million U.S. to start a journalism protection plan. And guess what? We've got some great journalists with us here today. I'm so happy to be joined by my friends Brithney Clarke from Nationwide 90 FM and Giovanni Dennis from TVJ. Welcome to the Star Spangled Sit Down, y'all.
Nice. Thanks for having us, Bobby.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having us.
So let's go ahead and get started. I'll start with you, Brithney, and then Giovanni. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been in journalism.
All right. So I've been in journalism. Well, I should say hello, everyone listening. I've been in journalism for 3 years, April this year. And, I've been doing a little bit of everything, a bit of reporting, a bit of producing, so I've had the full experience while at Nationwide, and it's been a good run for me thus far. So yeah, I've had a lot of fun. I mostly do a lot of news, entertainment related content. But of course, I'm just happy to be here with you today, Bobby, to talk about World Press Freedom Day.
Really excited to have you.
Yes.
And what about you, Giovanni?
Well, I've been in journalism a little bit longer than Britney, since 2011, actually. So, this year makes 11 going on 12 years now. I've been in journalism. I've worked at several media houses across Jamaica, starting at New Start 93 FM, the Jamaica Information Service. I've had a short stint at the BBC where I did an internship, and I'm with the RJ Arguina Communications Group since 2016. Nice. And yeah, I'm very happy to be here. I work across both radio and television, behind the scenes and in front of the cameras as well. So yeah, I have a bit of experience, and I'm quite happy and willing to speak and share just a little bit about what I
You're
learned.
also an alum of a State Department program called the International Visitor Leadership Program.
I'm very proud alum as well. So the moment I was invited here by your team, I said it to them, I did this program. I'm so very happy I did that. I'm so grateful for it as well, because the exposure I got from that, going to 4 different states in America, seeing how journalism is practiced in your country, how politics is practiced as well, the difference between Jamaica and the US, and just understanding the system to be able to better report on US relations sometimes, and also just to kind of inform how we do what we do here. I mean, your journalists in the US are really good as well in terms of how they go about their investigations. They do keep your government to their toe, and that's something that we want to practice here as well. And so yeah, I'm very happy to have that experience, and yeah, thank you again in this platform.
Absolutely. And so for those of you who are watching at home, if you have any comments, questions, leave them in the comment section, and we might pull them up, and so we might get some questions from the audience members. But a couple questions to start with you guys. So freedom of the press is vital to ensure that the public knows the truth. So Brithney, what, if any, significance will the role of the gatekeeper as we look towards the future of the media landscape?
All right. Well, I mean, gatekeeping is something that occurs in every industry, but for media in particular, and, I want to touch on the fact that the theme for this year is journalism under digital siege. So it speaks to the fact that the digital age is taking over, and, what we'd call the gatekeepers, which would be mostly traditional media, still has a very important role to play, given the fact that we now have to kind of control the narrative in a sense where we don't get lost in the flood of social media commentary and everybody being, citizen journalism these days. All you need is a smartphone, and with your smartphone, you have the ability to put out content. But we, as the mainstream media, now have to control that narrative so that we don't, get lost in that foray of social media commentary.
Do you think it's under siege? I mean, that's the theme.
Well, I don't think it's under siege per se, in the sense where it's beneficial to the mainstream media, because we now have a voice in the social media space. So under siege sounds a little bit extreme to say, social media is taking over altogether. Right. But as the mainstream media, we can utilize social media now to get our voices there and, kind of control the narrative in the digital space as well. So not just on the ground, but on social media online.
Giovanni, you came up, like you said, you mentioned all the different organizations you work with. So you came up under some traditional media, you've been around slightly longer than Brithney, as you mentioned. What can young journalists, though, do to ensure that their story holds true?
Stick to the facts. Don't get lost in the sensationalism that's happening online. Brittany would have mentioned a lot of how social media is, in a sense, helping traditional media as well with the availability of information so quickly. And everyone has a smartphone, being able to share something that's happening in their community almost instantaneously. But we still have a duty as journalists, as trained journalists, to verify whatever it is that we're getting. And so that process of verification cannot be overstated. Journalism is essentially a discipline of verification. And so social media, with all the good that it comes with, that's also a side effect because people have their own agenda. For example, whenever there's a hurricane or rain here in Jamaica, people always get old videos and share those online, and people are like,
as if they're current.
as if they're new. And that happens right across the platform with any current event that's happening. If there's an accident, if there's any major event, people always get fake stuff. And so we have to learn how to use these tools for the good, because the same social media that will give you those fake news, you can use it, do a reverse image search or Google search, just to ensure that these things are factual and they aren't, old things being resurfaced. So that's my advice, and that's my thinking and approach right now. The discipline of verification, checking with other traditional sources, also checking with your other colleagues that are at competing entities. I message people who work at Nationwide sometimes just to verify something, to say, hey, what's happening here? Can you give me this person's number so I can follow up on this? Because even though we're competing media entities, competing for eyes and ears, I think collectively we have the same role, which is to inform, educate, and entertain our population for the better in the end, even though we may be doing this at different media houses. So yeah, that would be my take and comment, and to young people coming in the profession, always verify.
So I got a couple follow-ups for Brithney based on what you said. Why do you think, Brithney, that people do what Giovanni mentioned, bringing up those old messages? Are people looking just to have attention, to draw attention to themselves?
Yes.
When they're just showing like, hey, look how bad the hurricane is right here, even though they know that's not actually.
That's not it. Okay, well, it's twofold. One, there's the agenda. So sometimes there are things happening, for example, art. So Jamaicans we have a lot of issues like poor infrastructure and stuff like that. So when an accident may happen, somebody may post an old image of a road that may probably have been repaired, but they want to use that to pull down somebody in their political leadership, so on and so forth. Otherwise, there's the whole clout chasing culture. Right. So people want the followers, people want the views, and sometimes when they have, sometimes even their own footage that they took a couple years back, they have it in their archives, they put it out because they want the numbers, they want the followers, they want the traction on social media. And it really is, probably there's not even any logic behind it. They just do it for the numbers.
And as Giovanni mentioned, the media kind of as a family, how do you weigh like, hey, I need to be the first to get the scoop, I need to first to get the exclusive of the story, versus getting the facts correct and verifying with your colleagues who might be in competing media houses?
All right. So we know that there's always the drive to be first, but there's also the drive to be first with the right information, right? So even though we're competing, so my media host may say, okay, we're putting out this information because this is what we can confirm, and then we've already had the confirmed, the verified bit first. Now the follow-up is really where we build on the story. So I work mostly in the social media department, so we'll get, say, 3 or 4 lines that will say, all right, this is what we have confirmed. Put it out so that people know we are on the story. And then the follow-up now will be where the team of us will go, we cross-check with other media hosts to say, okay, have you heard this? Do we have this? And we build out the story from there. So, it's, as I said, a bit of leveraging social media as well, but ensuring that we have the facts.
Social media as well as radio.
Right.
It has the benefit of like they can just jump in if they need to. TVJ, you have your set times of your shows that are going to be on, so it's a little bit more difficult to.
It is, but we do break news, and it's, even though I work at TVJ, it's one newsroom. So the journalists at TVJ, they work across radio in some instances as well. So if we need to break the news, for example, we can break it on the radio and on television. It's a little bit longer to break it on TV because of the different persons involved behind the scenes as well. But we do have that availability to be able to do that. The only thing though, and this is something I personally practice, I never try to be first with the news. I don't even tweet that much, quite frank. And it's not necessarily the best thing, but I think many of my colleagues do that, and they do it quite well. Brithney and her team. There are people who are at Gleaner, for example, is a part of the same company that I work, the RGR Gleaner Group. We do have a social media team now at TVJ in the newsroom, and we're doing better with that. But personally, I'm always trying to be the best with it, the most detailed and accurate, not at all trying to be first either.
Got
So
it.
that's my approach.
Yeah.
All right, we got a couple comments, mostly just people saying hello. So I'm going to pull up a couple here. Miss British Hamilton, she says, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi,
Abraham Hines, he's got, you guys can't see this, but Jamaica flags and American flags. Because we're a very, very American, setup here. My producer, who's also filming today, did a good job setting this up. Let's see. Anointed Pastor Jay says, good morning. So, folks, if you have questions for Brithney, for Giovanni, please send them in. Brithney, so we already talked about one of the focuses, of course, being digital media. How has the online audience evolved in recent times? How has the production of the media and the journalists evolved over the past 5-10 years that digital has become such a large thing?
All right. Well, it has evolved twofold. So I would say it has evolved in terms of their intellect. They know who to trust for the news. They also have evolved in the sense of, their commentary. They've become a little bit more responsible per se, because, with us traditional media being in the space, it's a little harder for them to get away with spreading the fake news. So, for example, somebody may share something. This is an actual example that I saw online. So we shared an article, right? And somebody else shared a counter article, and then they use our article as reference to say, no, here are the real facts. So we can see where our presence in the space has helped people to be a little more responsible, because we now have a position to hold them accountable and present the actual facts of the story. And then they know where to actually look for information, so they don't believe everything that they see online.
So, Giovanni, we talked about this before, but so the news cycle, has it been impacted significantly by online media channels? Is there still kind of an old school element to it in terms of having to break the story now versus having to wait and get the facts?
It's just about adapting to each media. So yes, it has been impacted by the availability of things being just immediately available online, and we needing to reach that platform. So yes, we do have a social media team. We'll have a social media version of different stories that we do. We'll share things online that we won't necessarily share in broadcast. But the important thing now, and we try to get this right most times, we don't always do, and I'll be the first to admit that, is to advance the story by the time it's news time at 7 o'clock. If something happens at midday where there was an accident with 4 people and 3 died or all 4 died, by the time it's primetime news at 7 o'clock, we can't be saying that same thing, because the entire country or most people would know that already. We have to know advanced story. What caused the accident? What is happening as a result? What are the identities of the people involved? And literally just moving the story forward. And that's kind of the challenge that we in traditional media have, because why would someone need to watch primetime news if they already have their smartphone and getting it from social media, from Twitter, to get what's happening? And so that's kind of the challenge that we have now. A further challenge, and it's not just other online media, I'm just trying to kind of expand the discussion a little bit. We're competing with things like YouTube and Netflix now, because again, these are at the fingertips of our viewers. And so we have to ensure that our content that we're coming with is it's of such substance that they will decide to pause a movie on Netflix or pause listening their playlist on YouTube to come and watch the news, because what we're giving them is important information that can benefit them, that they can learn from. And so that's the challenge that we have now. And it's a good thing. It forces us to do better, because we're competing now globally with the BBC, with CNN. And so we have to lift our standards if we want to keep our audience, even though they may be local. We can't take them for granted because of the digital platforms and the various plethora that people have access to.
So what's the challenge then? So we talked about social media. Let's say there's someone who's big on TikTok, who's big on Instagram. They might not be a journalist, but they are huge. They got a lot of followers. They are trying to report news. They might not be tracking, because they're not trained journalists, not tracking down the facts. What's the challenge for y'all having to be like, whoa, folks, hold up. We know that such and such is a super popular personality, but like, how do you go about like having to figure out what this person is saying is real, and having to let people know, hey, that person's popular, but let's see what the facts are.
All right. Well, one approach that we take is that we actually try to build a relationship with these sites. So we have blog sites. So This Is a Blast, the Dear Dream, the Pink Wall, etc. They are actually networks that receive information and report information, and then we would use their preliminary report to then track the information. So for example, they'll put out a preliminary report to say, okay, here's a video of a crime scene, police on the scene right now. It's our responsibility now to say, okay, they have footage that we want, they have information that we want, then we reach out to them to say, can you share this with us, or can you give us access to your source so we can then develop the story? So it's good to build networks with some of these sites as well, but then it's also important to establish our authority in the space to just say that, we will always try to put out the accurate information, and sometimes we may even reference them to say, first reported here, but verified by the police or confirmed by the police or external sources. So I think networking in that sense works as well. So, partnering with them to get their version of the story and then verifying it with our facts and our sources as well.
Giovanni, how do you deal with the challenges? So we're talking World Press Freedom. How do you deal with the challenges of reporting on a story that the facts are legit, but might be politically difficult for perhaps your own politics, or might be about a crime or a group of people who, might not be so great people that you might be afraid of retaliation that we see happen in many other countries? How do you deal with reporting on facts about very difficult and sensitive issues?
It's an ongoing challenge, I'll say, and I won't pretend that it isn't an issue here in Jamaica, given how small we are and how interconnected everything and everyone is. Everybody knows everybody. And so it's about being fair and balanced. And if you have to report something that's an uncomfortable truth, I remember a phrase I like is an inconvenient truth, that some people may not like it, but you have a duty to say it. And I've had to, tiptoe on that line throughout my career, and I'll continue to do that. And the only thing, truth is its own defense, and truth, will defend you. I mean, yes, it may get you in trouble or get you hated by some people or an aspect of people, and that's what journalism is about, essentially. It's about printing or publishing something that somebody somewhere does not want you to publish, really, because you will be stepping on some toes if you're doing the job properly, and, as it ought to be done. And so once you are fair and you stick to the facts, that's literally all you can do. You have to be careful, yes, and try to get balance. One of the things I practice, and it's very important, and I think most journalists practice it, to be fair as well, is giving people what we call a right of reply. You give that person enough time, you reach out to them, hey, we have this information, we have this thing verified that we have been tracking on you or your entity. I'm giving you a chance to respond. I'm going to do this story. Recently, for example, I did a story about work and travel, and I reached out to the agencies who I was reporting on and gave them a chance to respond. No, they didn't respond initially. One of them sent a statement. Subsequent to the report, one of them did come and do an interview afterwards, but I did give them that chance initially, and I went through and just, just double check all the sources as much as you can. I even reached out to the State Department, in fact, and I got a statement from the State Department about the issue. So I'd say that's the approach. Try to give them a chance to respond to this, because some people may have something to say. Some of them will say no comment or anything, or they'll try to threaten you with a lawsuit. But you have to trust your source and trust your information. Again, going back to what I spoke about earlier, through the discipline of verification, so that you can trust everything you have so much so that you're comfortable with going with that and get the clearance from your legal department.
Have you ever gotten anything wrong?
I wouldn't say I've gotten anything wrong necessarily, because I think the gatekeeping process again is so good where I am that I haven't necessarily gotten anything wrong. I practice it in such a way that I'm not trying to be sensational. I'm not trying to go with the hot story or the excitement. I'm going with substance, and I won't publish it if I can't prove it. I'm very mindful, even the way I pronounce words, the way I sound. If I'm sounding too excited, I try not to smile. It's a very thin line to walk. The ties that I wear when I'm reading the news, I'm very mindful of that, because we live in such a polarized society that you have to be very careful, and people are searching for a reason to be critical of you. You spoke about the competing with social media personalities. There are those as well, and people who are trying to compete with traditional media. And the only way that we will survive is just by sticking to those core values and core principles, discipline, fairness, balance, accuracy. All these things, those won't come out of style. It doesn't matter what's happening now on the various platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. The core principles of journalism will always remain. And once we practice it, and that's what I want to do, and I insist on doing that, I think we'll stand the test of time.
Speaking of the test of time, Brithney, will printed newspapers be a thing in 10 years or 15 years? I noticed, so Jamaica printed newspapers are still very, very popular. That's not the case in many U.S. cities, for instance. So many of the places have closed down. So yeah, our printed newspapers, our TVJs, are these big, traditional media hubs going to be radios that are going to be around in 10, 20 years?
Well, I think they'll still be around, but the audience, I think it will be more so in a niche kind of way. So for example, you'll always have people who will prefer the traditional route of having the tangible newspaper. So I'll not say that, in a few years' time, our Gleaner and our Observer will shut down entirely. No, I'm not saying that. But I do think that the approach that they take to getting media, or rather getting information to the people, will change. Right. Whereas these traditional media houses now will also have to have the online aspect, because you will always have the people who prefer having it mobile, taking it with them, but you'll still always have those folks who prefer to have their hard tangible newspaper. So I don't think it will be extinct, but it will be scaled down significantly just by how people are now consuming their information.
And just to add to that, I think they're already adapting both the Gleaner and the Observer. They have online versions. They have the Gleaner online, the Observer online. The Gleaner has a subscription-based platform now where you can subscribe to the e-paper.
Right.
And so I think they will still exist, but they'll adapt as the landscape changes and how people consume media changes as well. And I think we're also trying to save the trees.
Save the trees, exactly.
So then from that perspective as well, I think they'll have to adjust, and they already are doing that. So yeah.
So we're talking about the future of journalism. We're coming to an end of our interview. So you guys are the future of journalism here in Jamaica and in the region. So what advice do you have, Brithney, for young journalists or students who are looking to get into a career in journalism?
All right. Well, come with an open mindset, because journalism is right now, it's a very fast-paced and ever-changing discipline. So right now, even though we understand that there's a traditional aspect, we also have to know that we need to adapt to the digital aspect, because the digital aid will ensure the longevity of the traditional age, right? Also, stick to the facts, maintain the core values of journalism, the integrity, the accountability. Remember who it is that you're reporting for. So remember, they say that journalism is tantamount to democracy. We represent the people, and we report the facts, what's in the public's interest, and not necessarily always what the public is interested in, even though they may be interested in the news, so forth. But remember who it is that you represent. Remember what you represent, and that's the discipline and the art of journalism. And just stick true to your values, stick to the facts, trust your sources, protect your sources, and just ensure that that you have a platform to speak on issues that are so important and so tantamount, and you're fortunate enough to be in the age of social media and technology, so your views will be heard outside of whatever demography you are a part of right now. So if you're a Jamaican journalist, know that your views can be heard as far as Timbuktu, as Asia, across the world. And you are just in a very fortunate time now to know that you have the advancement of social media, but you have the integrity and the accountability and the the authority of traditional media platforms.
Thank you, Brithney. And Giovanni, I don't want to build your head up too big, but we did get a comment from Shani on Facebook that says, "Brilliant young journalist Giovanni." So what advice do you have for other potential young journalists to get into this career?
Go for it. If you genuinely want to do it, go for it. I believe as well, ensure that you're going for it for the right reasons. There are many people who I just want to be on TV, I just want to be on radio. And it's not about you, the person. It's really about the information that you're giving to the public. And so that's something that you always have to bear in mind. Of course, a side effect of that is that people will know you, but what are you being known for? Because somebody may see you on the television or hear on the radio, they'll be like, I'm not like that person. I don't like what they're saying. They're not having the substance. Is it all fluff? And so, yes, by all means, go for it, but ensure that you're going for it for the right reason. Ensure that you love what you're doing, because it doesn't necessarily pay very much, this profession, and anyone can tell you that in Jamaica. So once you love it, and you have to be willing to invest in yourself as well, you have to be willing to sacrifice your time and your resources. It really is a lifelong journey. I still read a journalism book once a month. I read over some of the material I've gotten. I've gone on to do a graduate degree after completing my undergraduate degree in 2012. I just completed one in 2019. It's something that it's evolving. The platforms are also evolving and they're multiplying. And so whereas in the past it could just be a newspaper journalist or just a TV journalist, you really and truly have to be able to work across platforms now. That's what's required. And so you have to be willing to do that. You can't just be the star of the show and come sit now and on the camera looking all beautiful. No, you have to work behind the scenes sometimes, because the same people who you are seeing in front of the cameras these people are able to work behind the scenes as well across, I think, I can certainly speak for my media house and a few others that I know. And so, yes, you have to be prepared to learn and learn a lot and be able to be efficient and learn quickly.
Yep.
It's a fast moving environment. Things are happening. You have to be able to adapt and adjust quickly. And so if you're ready for that, it's a challenge. It can be fun as well.
Yeah.
You get to go to places, you get to meet people who you probably grew up watching on television and all these things, but you have to adjust quickly as well. And just remember why you're here. That's important. Remember why you're here and remember how important your job is. Your job literally can change people's lives. It can bring, it can improve people's lives, and it can force your country and the authorities in your country to act better and to do better. And that's at our core, that's what we are. We're practicing developmental journalism. We're in a developing country. We have a duty and a responsibility to help develop our country by the kinds of works, that work that we're publishing and broadcasting.
Brithney mentioned the reach of your work. We got a couple people chiming in. Natalie Allen says, "Good morning, Jamaica, tuning in from Charlotte, North Carolina."
Hi.
Olga is chiming in. Good morning from Miami, Florida.
Hi, Olga.
I think Giovanni's words for young folks, go for it, ring true. Thank you guys so much for joining us on the Star Spangled Sit Down today. Again, you can catch Giovanni on TVJ. You can catch Brithney on Nationwide 90 FM. Thank you all for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.